So our guest, this is very interesting. We actually had him on a few weeks ago, and he told a very compelling story about his escape, his literal escape from Vietnam when he was growing up. Quan Nguyen, he is an Arizona state representative. He's a Republican, and he is as pro Second Amendment as ever there was a person. I mean, he really, really, truly walks the talk, and supports our Second Amendment rights. So it's an honor to have you back on. Quan, how are you?
Thank you, sir. I'm fine. Thank you. Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year. Thank you so much for joining us. And this is, I think this is going to be a very interesting discussion.
I'm here for it.
So we've talked in shows over the last month or so about some of the differences, especially some of the appointments that are coming along with Donald Trump. I don't think I don't even think it's subjective to say that if you're a Second Amendment person, if that's your top one or two or even three hot button political issues, that you voted for Trump. I don't think that Trump was perfect on Second Amendment, but I think he's just about the best president we've ever had on Second Amendment. And he was worlds apart from Kamala Harris. I can't imagine somebody who values and loves and fights for the Second Amendment who decided that, hey, Kamala Harris is probably the candidate for me. I don't know. Do you agree with that, Quan?
Yeah, well, you know what? I actually live that life right now with Katie Hobbs being my governor. And so my executive branch is as anti-gun as anti-gun can be, right?
Yeah.
And
In
so
Arizona.
in Arizona, of
Yeah.
all places in Arizona, we have a Democrat governor who, doesn't like guns very much or doesn't respect the Second Amendment. And so part of my job as the chair of Judiciary Committee is not so much passing laws to protect the Second Amendment, but to actually kill bills that are anti-guns, anti-Second Amendment. And so every one of those bills go across my desk. So I thank the Lord for that.
And there's been an increase in anti-gun bills in Arizona over the last few years.
So,
right?
so there are about 30 waiting for me right now.
30 anti-gun bills?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
All lined up, ready for me to use my shredder. I'm just so honored to have the opportunity to do this. And me coming from a place where we didn't have the Second Amendment, we didn't have guns, we weren't able to protect our country, and we lost our freedom. And that's the reason why I'm here. And the Second Amendment, as you said in the top of your show there, it is the number one issue on my desk. It's the thing that I wake up and I think about. It's the thing that I think about when I'm driving. It's everything about the Second Amendment is everything that I never had before. And it just basically translates to the freedom of living free. I mean, I don't know how to describe it any other way.
You're a true believer, and I absolutely, I'm so thankful that we have people in office that are that dedicated and that passionate about the Second Amendment. You would think that everybody, if you talk to the average Californian, the average San Diegan, they would think that everybody in Arizona thinks like you do, which is continuing to change. I mean, your governor's anti-gun, but then you also have a U.S. senator that's anti-gun. In fact, he heads an anti-gun organization. I mean, things are not. It's not the land of milk and honey when it comes to Second Amendment in Arizona. There's the marauders are at the gate in Arizona, and you guys are having to fend them back. I mean, it's a real true fight there right now.
You said it right. Not everybody is friendly to guns with either political party, actually. Like I said, when we met in San Diego, I think I said something to the fact that you shouldn't allow your state representative or your politician putting the Second Amendment as a bullet item on the platform. Unfortunately, we see a lot of that. As for me, I really don't care about my political life, meaning I only have 2 more terms. If I get people upset about my stance on the Second Amendment, that'd be fine. As a matter of fact, on Monday, I'm putting out a letter to the Department of Health and Human Services when they put out that child fatality report a few weeks ago, and one of the recommendations was to remove firearms from every family that had a child, a minor.
Wow. Health and Human Services in Arizona is putting out a recommendation that any family that has a child needs to have their gun removed. That's their recommendation.
We're looking anywhere from 500 to 600,000 families.
Wow. So you have a fight on your hand and you're passionate about it. Now I want to talk about something very specific because we've talked about Trump. We've talked about some of his potential cabinet picks, and nothing's official yet because he's not the president yet, but he's definitely floated some names out there. We talked about some of the unknowns and some of the knowns. We've specifically, though, you wanted to talk about his what we think is the front runner for his ATF position, the head of the ATF. A lot of people in the gun community are saying, hey, we hope Brandon Herrera gets it. There have been a couple of other names that have been floated out there, but it's looking like people are settling on the name of a guy named Blake Masters. And we talked about Blake on the show a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. He ran for office, and he was very vocal about Second Amendment when he was running for office, but he doesn't really have any kind of track record of actually doing anything. He's never helped pass a bill or anything like that. So it's all been rhetoric. I appreciate good rhetoric. I like it when people stand up and say, hey, this is a priority. But we don't have a track record for him to I don't have any knowledge of a track record of him on Second Amendment. So you wanted to talk a little bit about Blake. What do you know about Blake? Because he's from Arizona. Right?
Actually, I voted for Blake. I supported Blake. I even go as far as saying if he is appointed as director of ATF, I think he would be 1,000 times better than the last guy.
Right.
Right? Do you agree? Right. And I think anybody would be able to learn to understand the Second Amendment. I mean, you talk about, historical analog and those are the kind of things that came out of Bruin. I mean, we hope that your ATF director would have an understanding of the Supreme Court rulings. And let's just go all the way back to Heller even. I mean, just basic information, and I think that would add a lot to the law enforcement part of the ATF, and not so much. I mean, somebody asked me the other day, what would you like to see your ATF do when she gets the job? And I say, get rid of every single rule in the books. In the book should, as a matter of fact, it's kind of funny. I just saw a statement put out by the ATF on their website regarding the myths of the ATF. And one of the things they said was the ATF makes law, and it says false. Well, no, they don't make laws. They make rules. They bypass Congress to make rules. So, of course, they don't make laws. But what I like to see is the T part being taken more seriously. Get rid of every single rule you can imagine. And if somebody thought that was a good rule that we got rid of, then go through Congress. Have the president sign that into law. And that's what the director should be doing, enforcing federal law.
And do you think Blake is that guy? Or, are you confident that he would be able to step in and not just be effective, but also stand with our principles and what we want to see happen?
Oh, I think eventually, if he has that, anybody can learn, right? Eventually, you'll get to that point. But I kind of like to see somebody like a Brandon Herrera who can just step in and do the job. And I think Masters is better than many, but then also many are better than him.
And I think they have their strengths and weaknesses. I think Brandon Herrera is definitely somebody that understands from a first person perspective what the problems are. What the end user sees the problems are. I think that you're gonna whoever steps in to be the director of the ATF. The ATF's pretty big. The ATF is it's not one guy. And my fear is that whoever steps in is still going to be surrounded by a lot of people who philosophically were more in line with the last guy than they are with us. So whoever steps in is going to have to deal with the politics of it, and they're going to have to be able to be strong enough and talented enough to work with people that disagree with him or disagree with the mission. And it's easy to say, like, oh, well, gee, they're government workers. They just do what they're told or whatever. But, the reality is a lot of this stuff happens not at the top, but, at the bottom, and especially middle management. And I think Brandon Herrera is somebody that agrees with us, probably, has a better track record. And I probably have more faith that philosophically he's with us and understands us better than Blake. But I do wonder if Blake, one of his strengths is the ability to deal with the political side and deal with being surrounded by, a bunch of people that don't necessarily agree with Trump or agree with Blake. And I don't know that he may bring that talent with him. That may be one of his strengths.
This is one thing, but working within the political space is another thing. I mean, you and I can talk about politics, but I'm actually the guy that actually stood on the floor in defending the Second Amendment.
Right.
There's a big difference there. And then you have, 31 Republicans, 29 Democrats, and all 29 of them are just barreling down on you. And you have to stand up there on the floor to defend a bill. So in a way, for the most part, I'm not politically correct. What I am is I'm politically stubborn when I know I'm right on the issue, and I will go after it until you throw me off the mic.
And who do you think would be that person? Who would be closer to you, heading up the ATF?
I think Brandon Herrera would be a whole lot closer to that than I mean, I met Blake. I spoke to Blake. I voted for Blake. I think he's a fine man. He's a fine conservative. But when we're talking about having knowledge of the Second Amendment, that's where you see the difference. And I understand there's the alcohol part, there's the tobacco part, there are regulation. It is a taxing agency, and we need it. That's fine. But I like to see more of the law enforcement side, to where going after the bad guys that are breaking the laws, guys that are trafficking guns, alcohol, straw buyers, stolen firearms. So those are the kind of things that we need them to go after, and not spend the resources to go after FFL dealers or law-abiding citizens.
Do you think it's rational? Do you think it's a rational and real possibility that we could get rid of the ATF? And is that even something that you would support?
I would definitely support getting rid of the ATF, if not just the T part. The F part. I'm sorry, just the F part.
Just the F part. So let them regulate booze and tobacco, but stay out of guns.
Leave the rest of it alone. And I think every time somebody gets into that position, they want to make another rule. Today we're going to ban bump stock. Tomorrow we're going to ban Glock switch. But at the end of the day, it's an infringement on all of us. I'd like to see suppressor being manufactured in Arizona, and we don't have to pay a tax stamp on it. There are a lot of things that we can do if you get the right guy into that position.
I think that's important. Look, the ATF I've said many times is a predatory agency, and I think they should be gone. But I was talking with somebody who is very knowledgeable on the subject, on Second Amendment, and they're involved with one of the other big organizations. I'm not going to say exactly who it is because I don't know if he wants me to or not. But he brought up the point. He said, if you just keep the ATF in place and water them down and muzzle them, it might be better than getting rid of them. Because if you get rid of them, it'll be picked up by, like, say, the FBI. So now you have, a division of the FBI, which is now basically what the ATF was, but now it's better funded. A lot of folks don't really care about the ATF. They're kind of maybe they'd be described as the redheaded stepchild of federal law enforcement. But the FBI is not the redhead. They're well funded. And if they just set up a department, a division of FBI to do exactly what ATF is doing, that might actually be worse. But that maybe a solution is to take ATF and just muzzle them and say, hey, you guys get to pass out, the equivalent of parking tickets. But other than that, that's all you get to do. And I thought that was an interesting perspective.
You know what, though? Once you strip out all the rules, especially with the Supreme Court ruling on the Chevron difference, you're not going to be able to make another rule.
Which is important. And that
which
is the
is
real solution. Yeah. The real
um,
solution is getting rid of the rules and the regulations. You're absolutely right.
so you need somebody that goes in there with a little bit of backbone. I'm not saying Black doesn't have it. You need somebody to go in there with a backbone who has experience on the legislative side,
Yeah.
who has the ability to stand up there and said, "Hey, let's reason this out. You're wrong. I'm right. I'm gonna kill your bill. I'm gonna get my bill passed, and hopefully, I'll have a governor, Republican governor, one day who can help me reclaim all the losses that we had with the Second Amendment." And that's what I think the
Well,
person.
how do we get your name in the running for head of the ATF? I got to
Hey,
tell
I
you.
have a lot of dreams. I have a dreams, right? I would love to run the NRA. I would love to run a lot of organization. I think before I go down 6 feet under, I would love to be working within just the Second Amendment space. And yeah, being the director of ATF, man, I'd be jumping all over the place on that one. My chances are going from 0 to 0. And I would love to be that guy. I'd love to be on the list just so I could tell my kids I was on the list.
There you go. Well, Quan, thank you so much for your time and your perspective. I think it's extremely interesting. I appreciate the information you gave us, particularly on Blake, somebody we really know very little about. There's some folks that I haven't heard necessarily anything bad about him. I've just heard that people don't know enough about him, and then I've heard people that say, yeah, he'd probably be a pretty good person in the environment. So I hope he does a good job. I have a lot of faith in President Trump. So I hope that whoever whoever gets the job does it well and is directed by someone who philosophically agrees with us. So anyway, Quan, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time. Take care.
Quan.
What do you think about that?
I like the way his mind thinks. I like the way that he has a gift for really thinking, kind of looking, not being biased, not letting emotion get into it. And I like his perspective.
He's a warrior. I got to tell you, I wish we had people on this side of the Colorado River who were as willing to speak up as loudly and as clearly as he does. I think he does an amazing job.
Well, he was talking about last time we had him on about the whole power and coming at and approaching topics with logic and not just browbeating and trying to pressure people.
Yeah.
He has a real gift for being able to do that. To kind of convince and give you facts without being offensive.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. I'm Michael from Gun Owners Radio. If you liked what you saw, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and make a comment. Help us out. Go to gunownersradio.com. Thanks for watching.